Welcome to another episode of the New Labor Movement Show. I am one of your hosts, Troy.
I'm the other host, Ray.
Back to go over another week of local law, labor, and politics. We did have a couple of things in mind to go over this show, but then something just dropped actually tonight, and we want to go over, get some discussion back and forth on it. In Georgia, Georgia just passed a sweeping new voting rights bill that will make drastic changes to the way voting is handled in their state.
Drastic? Okay.
I think it's drastic when you put it that the certification of election can be taken over and changed by the politicians currently in office. I think that's drastic.
I'm not familiar with them saying the certification. I know the certification in many states is either done by the governor, the legislation, or an election committee, like the department, the Board of Elections. And I believe that they had an agreement with Stacey Abrams. Now, this is where this all kind of stems from. And there's something that's legally going to be contested. Eventually, between now and the next presidential election, and you like it between now and 2022, one of these states, or someone's going to get this up in front of the Supreme Court that, under the Constitution, only state legislatures can change the time and manner of elections. And a lot of these states where there was, I'm not going to say shenanigans, but I'm going to say there was a question. A question. It was because they had entered into agreements that were either made by a governor who couldn't have the power, a state court, or in this one, Stacey Abrams, her group. I apologize for not knowing the name of it.
Probably Fair Fight. Is it Fair Fight?
I disagree with her politics. She still hasn't even admitted that she lost the Georgia governorship, but that's another show. But she has become, the fact that she has gotten Georgia purple is a minor miracle. I mean, you think of Georgia, you think of good old boys, Republicans. You don't ever think of it as a state, which I think the demographic has changed down there, as purple now. It's in play. Her group and the head of the Board of Elections entered into a consent decree, which changed a whole bunch of rules, which opened the polls longer.
Made it easier to vote.
But less than a year ago.
Made it easier to vote. The things you're saying.
No. Again, easier to vote doesn't always mean safer. It's better to vote. In other words,
why not?
Well, because think about this. If you have easier to vote means that anyone can vote. But that's not, but by definition, that is not true. In this country, you have to be 18, so not everyone could vote. You have to be a U.S. citizen, so not everyone could vote.
It wasn't affecting those people.
Anyone could vote. So, in other words, again, if it were up to me, I would have it that I would want the states to run it where they would have as much, not exclusive, but as much in-person voting, showing a valid ID, and or proof of citizenship.
Okay, great.
I mean,
let's talk about.
Think about this. You have to show proof of citizenship to collect benefits, to get on a plane, to sign a mortgage, to go to college, to drive. I mean, the fact that they think that, the fact that they make it whoever they are, the fact that they think that it's racial, that you would ask people to get ID, mind boggles me. Again, I
love the way that people try to package that together. So there's like 32 things in there that could be looked at as targeting one specific group. But then you say the thing with, I hate that they ask because we're asking for ID, that's racial. It's not racial. It's not that. Maybe not that. Maybe it's the 31 things that add to it that makes it racial.
Well, listen, I would agree with you if you were asking one group to do something different than another group. But if you ask everyone to do it the same way, how is that
If you know,
distinguish one group from
if
another.
you know one group already has, if you know that 90% of the voters in Georgia that are Black go to vote on Sundays after church. And I don't say, hey, I'm going to target Black voters by marking but I'm just going to cut off Sunday. But Sunday's there for everybody. I'm not targeting Black voters. I'm just saying Sunday. I'm saying it for everybody, not just the Black voters. So there's a very easy way that you can target a specific people without saying that you're targeting those specific people. And nobody.
So are you implying that Black people can't vote on any other day of the week?
No, but if you know that, if you know that that's where the target is, and you know that this is where the majority comes from, and I'm going to target that, then you're going to tell me you're not doing that. What other reason are you doing it for?
I didn't write the law. I think as long as you treat everyone the same, that's it. Because listen, there's plenty of states. By the way, you can't vote on Sundays in the state of New York. Is New York racist?
Does New York change the law because they have a abundance of people of color voting on that day? If they
maybe they changed the law for a reason, because they want, instead of doing it on a Sunday, when maybe
you're making stuff up right now.
No, I agree. I 100% am. But there is no no one has. You're implying, and you're trying to read someone's mind, that you're saying that because they're killing Sundays, they don't want Black people voting. But yet Black people have the same exact parameters as everyone else in the state to vote. So and again, yes, if your goal is to say that we are stopping people from voting, yes, you could definitely make the argument that it looks that way. But a lot of times things look a certain way, and then when you get to what's behind it, it makes sense. I would have to dig into that.
You could listen. I'm pretty sure you could dig into it to find a way to try to make it make sense. But the honest
not
truth,
me, and the person.
No, anyone. I'm saying anyone could dig. You could dig into anything and take the same set of a sentence and try to make a rule behind it to make it make sense. But you don't usually have to dig that hard. It's the simplest answer. You could, if you look and you see what happened, Georgia, a large majority of people came out and voted democratically. A large group of those people democratically or minorities. So immediately after that, changes were made that will make it more difficult for minorities to vote. When you say it's like everyone could, everyone could vote.
They still have early voting. They
cut down the time for early voting. They cut down the time for runoffs.
For everybody. For everybody. So they made it just as hard for white people as Black people.
Yes, but listen, it's easy you can say that because it's blanket, but it's not blanket. Stop trying to make it like it's black and white, like, oh, it's for everybody. Like there's no difference in disparity in the two.
You know what it is? I think, not you, but I think people look at it's like a soft racism that they try to imply that certain groups can't do the same things that other groups can. So it must be a racial thing.
Let me ask you a question. Both groups can do it, right? Of course, we're all human beings. Right. Both groups can do it. But Agreed. You need to tell me you don't see it being more difficult for one group to do certain things over the other?
No, because it's
not. It's not. Let me ask you a question.
Listen, and I have to be honest. I am not Black, so I do not have a history of feeling that way, thinking that way, or even possibly being treated that way. In other words, ever since I voted in New York, I've always just walked over on election day to my local school, right? Never had to show ID. They just, you sign your name, they pretend to look at it, and then you vote. You know what I mean? That's that.
Now you say that, let me ask you.
I think, believe it or not, I think we were very soft on security. I mean, think about it. You're in New York.
Listen, Ray, okay, I'll let you go for a little while. You're going on security. This is not about security.
I think part of it is.
Oh, yes. Maybe a small part of it is. A small part enough that they can use that to try to justify the rest of the BS that they're adding with it. When you say everything
So
is
you, so
even, I want to
you
go back
think
to that thing. When you say everything is even, like all people can do it.
that,
So at the Jim Crow era, when they applied, say, a literacy test in order to be able to vote, because of course everyone can read, right? But it was statistically that a larger portion of the minority was the people who weren't be able to pass that literacy test. So you're gonna tell me now it's the same, that's for everybody, but you tell me you think that
all right,
it's even
again,
there.
no. See, I would disagree then. And yes,
Why then?
that was
Why
in the
then and not
time of
now?
separate but equal. Because I think now the I guess I'm crazy. I think that black people and other people of color have caught up with, because of advances in our country, that they are on equal footing with white people now. Sorry, I just do.
And
I don't
equal
look at
footing, and
someone.
that equal footing, fine. That equal footing means that there's also no other disparities. So, like, let me ask you a question just straight off the back. If you're looking at wealth in this country,
Okay.
of who has wealth, one whether it's whites or blacks, is one group of those two hold more wealth than the other?
I don't see how this does with voting, but I'll go down here with you. I do believe that yes, I do think that the average
No,
white
no.
family has more wealth than the average black family.
Okay.
Yes.
Now say the next thing, like when it came down to like COVID and then the crisis, essential workers. A lot of the essential workers, and the reason that they said we're dying at higher rates because a lot of people that held those essential jobs were more people of color than there were people that white and affluent. Do you believe that that is correct? That there's a disparity between those two, the people that will hold essential work?
I don't think how people choose their career is it. If
Not
you're
how they
asking me if
choose
it's a
it. Not how they choose it, Ray. What is it? Are there more people of color that hold those jobs than there are white?
Yes, but there's 5 reasons for that.
Okay, no, not the reasons behind it, but it is what it is. So if I make a law in place, now I know all those workers, those essential workers who work those jobs have to work 9 to 5s. So there are more of them in that bucket. Don't you think if I do something that makes it where voting stops at 5 o'clock, where all those people get off, you don't think I am going to disenfranchise that group who we just said is now more inclined to be in that position than the other?
I would hold on. See, what I'll have see now, what you're doing is now you're conflating a bunch of different things. You're saying essential workers, that's one thing. But I think you would find that I'm sure if you went to Georgia, you would find that there is a high number of whites who also work 9 to 5 hourly wage jobs.
Which one would be more, you think? Which one would be more?
I would think overall, because there's more white people in Georgia, that you probably have more white people working 9 to 5 because of the population disparity. If
Okay.
you're talking percentage, I would think there'd probably be a high percentage of blacks per capita. But if you're going to talk overall voters, I would think that more whites. There's,
I don't understand that. Say that again. You think there's more blacks but more white voters?
I would, yeah. Think about it. Georgia has something like 11 million people. I think it's only about 2.5 or less than 3 million are black. That's like 8 million white people.
Right. So I'm saying, so you said more. I thought you said that there were more black than white, but more white.
No. There's more white. There's more white voters, and
right.
Georgia is not Georgia's not a high finance economy. So I would imagine that if you're talking overall gross numbers, but not putting any reason behind it, there would be more 9 to 5 voters who are white than black. If you're asking me of the 8 million whites, the percentage would be lower. Like maybe hypothetically, like say 10%, 20% of whites would do it, which would give you like 2 million. And maybe 35, 40% of blacks would do it, which would give you like maybe 400, 500,000.
Now we're going to pull up, this is easy to pull up the statistics.
Whites would have more voters, but blacks would have a higher percentage.
Georgia had, and this was the highest claim of, there must have been some type of voter fraud and there was irregularities in the election. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there were 3 separate recounts in Georgia alone. One of them being an actual hand recount, and none of this was found.
No,
But
here
yet,
again,
they're
you have
making
to go one.
sweeping
You have to go
changes
one step. You have
to
to
the
go
way
one step.
they have this vote.
You have to go one step deeper.
What's
The,
the one step deeper?
yes, if you're asking me that when they did a hand count and a machine count that they found that the tallies they put up were legit, that is yes. But that was not the argument on the other side. The argument on the other side is that you went by signatures and if you actually they actually lowered the threshold. Used to be the signature had to match something like 70 to 80%. Now the signature match is lower. So what happens is if you really compared the signatures, a lot more would have been rejected based on that. And again, I'm not saying I want things rejected because of signature, but guess what? If you mailed in your ID, you would have to go by the signature because guess what? You'd have your ID. That would solve it. Or here's a better thing. If you went in person, you'd vote in person and you'd be fine.
That's great. I mean, the thing about it is you.
And the bigger thing about that is all these changes that were made within the year before the election were all made outside of the Georgia legislature. They were all made by Stacey Abrams and her groups and the Board of Elections of Georgia, and that's unconstitutional.
The changes that were made during the pandemic to try to still make it people able to vote, I know are the big things that people have a problem with.
But
even though no fraud was found, no problems, the problem is that too many people were allowed to vote.
That is not true. That is not
I'm
true.
sorry. There were some problems found.
No, again, I'm not. Again, I am not. I know for a fact that there was fraud in the election, and I think that it was. Do I think there was enough to change the outcome of the election? There is no way for any reasonable person. There is no way any reasonable person could.
No, any reasonable person can look at what was put and said there is no way that the fraud, any fraud that was found, would be enough to change the election.
Well, because you know what, they didn't require a state ID.
No way.
There's a lot of stuff that other people. Again,
now you're assuming. You're saying if they would have had more fraud, if they would have checked more IDs, we probably would have found enough fraud. If they would have held some of these people from going in and mailing it, we probably would have found more fraud. If they would, you're trying to manufacture.
I'm not trying. No, what I'm saying is that you know what, I was the first one. I said, let's let the court cases come. Let's do this. Let's do that. And once the state certified, I said, Joe Biden's the president. I did. Yep. And I thought that when Trump goes out there and he was saying hundreds of thousands of false signatures, that's all nonsense.
Yeah. So how can you say then that no one knows if there would be enough? Everyone, we know by now. We know that there was no way there would have been enough in order to change anything.
Again, no, we don't know because we don't know how many people, because they loosened the standard of mail-in ballots and all that, how many other ballots would have been rejected? We don't know that.
So the rejection is what we would have counted on. We've been able to.
That is one thing of it. Also, that's just Georgia. Pennsylvania, they were accepting ballots 6 days.
Yeah, but this is the thing, right? You're banking on if they would change it. No, I'm not banking on anything. Your argument is premised on. We don't know how it would have worked out if we would have been able to do like they did before and reject more ballots.
I'll ask you this, and I'll ask you this then: if they had done the full count and all of a sudden, if they had asked like Mr. Trump said, and said, check the signatures against the state ID, not the application, but the state ID, and magically 50,000 votes because they didn't match the ID. Had gone his way, would you then have accepted that, or would you have protested that?
I definitely would have protested it because I don't believe that in the first place. Now, if they would have said that the signatures don't match and we need to verify, so now we're going to contact the person and then verify the signature. Okay, we're great. How about that?
Going to verify 50,000 signatures?
Go to 50,000 people and get them to verify as them. It can be done.
Now, or
would you have been for that?
Or how about you show up in person and you vote with an ID?
That's not what they chose to do.
I agree. But you see how they, just between us, people of good faith, there's wiggle room to say, you think there's no way. I think there's a possible way. And again,
How do you're killing your own argument? Where
No,
do you still see a possible way? You're not telling me where this possible way can come from.
I'll say it third time I'm going to say it.
Okay, let me slow down because I might not have heard it the first two.
I'll speak slowly. They changed the rules unconstitutionally. That's number one.
Procedure.
Correct, but
that doesn't add to any change in that adds any.
No, see, but then the fact that you're saying that we can change the rules, which then changes who is technically qualified to vote, automatically changes the rules.
It does not change who's no. It did not change technically who was allowed to vote. The same people can vote, but it did make it easier for those people who are already eligible to vote. It did not change who can vote. They didn't say, now 17-year-olds can vote. They didn't say, now people with one leg and a limp could vote who couldn't vote before. It was the same people. Now just it opens a pool, so it makes it easier.
See, again, now you're missing some of the facts that.
Unless you tell me I'm wrong.
Like I think there was almost 1 million new registered voters under the new standard, and they registered by basically. And they proved
pause for a second. What was the new standard? Did they allow some group or segment of people who weren't able to vote before to now vote?
The proof of identification was lower.
Okay, did they allow a group or segment of people who were not able to vote before to now vote?
I would say there is a possibility of that because you lowered the identification standard.
So, so these are still citizens that could vote, but now because they made it easier for them to vote. They could always vote, but they made it easier for them to vote. So you saying that opened up a new segment?
Right. But again, there are rules for a reason. In other words, you have to live here. You have to prove who you are.
I know what the reason is for those rules.
Oh, again, don't go racist. Too easy.
They don't want certain people to vote. Listen, they said it themselves. If we make the voting too easy and too many people vote, no Republican will win. And that's what they will.
That's not true. That is not true. Okay.
I said that's what they said. I didn't say whether it's true or not.
No.
This is the premise they're going on.
Dude, listen.
That's what they said. You do know that that's a fact, though. That's what they said.
Who?
I know definitely Trump said it, and I can't remember who was the other politician that also came out and said it. That if they make it where if it's easy to vote and too many Democratic people are allowed to vote, that a Republican would never be able to win again.
Yeah, that's nonsense.
But you know he said that though.
Have people said sure? People have also said there's unicorns. Okay. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
What I would say is see, I fundamentally believe in election. The security of election. I don't think there's anything wrong with making someone prove who they are. I think there should be no such thing as ballot harvesting. See, what's happening is one party is trying to make it, all you do is look at HR 1. They want to make it illegal that you can ask someone for ID to vote. They want to make it so that kids are automatically registered at 16. Now, imagine, how about the fact that we give illegals and not illegal residents, we give everyone a driver's ID and we want to vote. Then when you get a driver's license, guess what? You can get an ID. You can register to vote. Now, all that does is muddy up the waters. And am I saying that it's a millions and millions and millions of people? I have no idea. No one has any idea because think about this. If I'm 16, I register to vote and I say, I'm going to show up and I show up. I'm on the voter roll. I'm registered to vote. They're not going to, now you can't ask me for ID. Look, I'm John Smith. I'm registered to vote. How do I know that? Here's my signature. Can I see some ID to prove yourself? No, you can't ask me that. So now that 16-year-old, that illegal alien, that person who doesn't have the right to vote because they're a felon, for whatever reason, they all get to vote.
But this is all, don't forget, this is all manufactured of what you feel could be the outcome if this were to happen.
No.
But the fact is, what currently is happening, what has happened in this election that was scrutinized.
How you know?
How I know, because 60 court cases and someone fighting to trying to find tooth and nail everything they could came up with nothing. So people check and prove it. That's how I know.
No. See, but here's the problem. the way all the problems I have just stated, there's no way to catch those people.
How there's no way to catch them? If they do, if they go back through and count votes, and they're going back,
you're going to count votes. But in other words, if I check to see how many people were on the registration? Oh, we have 8 million registered voters. We have 7 million people who voted. Fine. How's there fraud? But in other words, if the person is put on the voter roll and you can't ask to check his ID, you don't know that the guy may have been put there either fraudulently on purpose or fraudulently by accident.
Damn, you know what?
You don't think there's a ton of people who are not eligible to vote for a myriad of reasons?
Let's go with your premise. Let's say, you know what? You're 100% right, and that's what's happening. I don't know how, with the amount of effort and time they were putting into it, they couldn't find at least a group of a couple of hundred that this would happen to, that they would point out. That
how would you find out though?
I don't know. I don't know if they're going through and checking it. But I haven't looked into it enough to see.
Well, let me ask you this. I want it to be easy to vote. I have no problem with easy voting. I want as much in-person voting as humanly possible. But I don't understand why. I hate the fact that people say, well, you can't get down to election day. I mean, you know how many, dude, in this country for hundreds of years, 100 years, people voted on election day.
That's great. But now this is also with the disparity. Everybody goes to election day because, like you said, you walk down the block, go to the school, go in and punch your vote. It's so easy. For other people have to travel, bus, train, after work, miles and miles and miles to get to voting booths, to wait in line for 12, 13 hours and able to cast one vote. So people always look at what I have to do as opposed to what other people might have to do, and don't see the disenfranchisement disparity between themselves and other people. So one of the other big questions I just want to ask is, what part of the law is good to say, I'm going to make it illegal for you to give somebody waiting online to vote 14 hours, be able to give them any water or snacks, as opposed to saying, I'm going to fix the reason why people have to wait 14 hours in line to vote?
I believe the reason behind that, I don't honestly.
You're not going to justify that one, are you?
No, I'm not justifying it. I don't know why someone would not want to. First of all, I hate to say this, but on this election day, when I saw voting hours, I mean, I waited in line for like probably an hour and a half, hour 45, because everyone I know voted. It was one poll and it was crazy. Hour
and a half was crazy.
It is. I used to go vote. Like, I used to walk up. Used to take me, the whole thing used to take me like, when I was younger, I used to go work late for Time Warner. I used to go after work, I get there like, 9:15. There'd be no one there. Just go in and go out.
So sweet for you. Well, this has been a good talk. Well, this has been another episode of the New Labor Movement Show. I am one of your hosts, Troy.
I'm your host, Ray, and I do think you and I agree on one thing. We want as many legal people to be able to vote as easily as possible. We can agree on that?
I agree. I just don't know if you agree.
I do.